Hello everyone, this is the video reporting of the Group 1. The content of this video is all about the introduction to the study of globalization by Manfred Steger. But before we will start to our main topic, we have a friendly reminder to our dear viewers. The purpose of this video is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardenes, to use this as an educational material. No copyright infringement intended. All rights belong to their respective owners. So, let's proceed to the learning objectives. In this topic, the students will be able to learn the meaning of the globalization and its history. Next is the ideology of globalization according to Manfred Steger. Next is the sentiment of Michael Frieden and the contribution of Alger Apadure. Lastly, the scapes of globalization. So, let's proceed to the meaning of globalization. What is globalization all about? Globalization refers to the expansion and intensification of social relations and consciousness across world time and world space. It is a multidimensional phenomenon involving economics, politics, culture, ideology, environment, and technology. The term globalization also used to describe how trade and technology have made the world a more connected and interdependent place. So the basic example for this is like in economics. For example, the foreign investors wants to invest in the Philippines to create more businesses and jobs for the people. That's why we develop and having more connected to the other country due to our competitive industry and trading of any products and services. Another example is the technology, like our smartphones, internet, and satellite have the biggest contribution in our world where people across the globe are easily to get connected to each other. Also, with the help of the social media. Example, Facebook, Messenger, Gmail, and other social media propagandas.
Examples: liberalism presupposes a wide array of views depending on their understanding of this principle, but they generally support private property, market economies, and individual rights. Next, cosmopolitanism. In the political theory, they believe that all people are entitled to equal respect and consideration no matter
Michael
what
Freden.
their
First of all, let me
citizenship
introduce you
status
to
or
Michael
other
Freden. Michael Freden is a
affiliations happen
professional
to be.
research
That's all.
associate
Thank you.
at the Department of Politics in the International Studies in the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. He is also Emeritus Professional Fellow at the Mansfield College, Oxford. He is leading the theories of ideology and the founding editor of the Journal of the Politics Ideologies by the studying of conceptual evolution of ideologies. Frieden observed that the relative political success of an ideology depends on its ability to impose beliefs that its own conceptual definition are the correct ones. Now, the question is, how is ideology related to globalization? So, globalism is emerged as a dominant set of ideologies in late 20th century. As these ideologies settled as a various process of globalization intensified, they contributed to the consolidation of connecting global imaginary. Also, the basic ideology of globalization is liberation of trade and integration of free markets to enhance social, economic, and political stability across the world. So going back, In a recent article of Shifting Ideological Boundaries, taking issue with Michael Frieden's skepticism that is too far early to pronounce on globalism status as an ideology. This article seeks to demonstrate that globalism not only represents a coherent set of political ideas, but also beliefs worthy of the status of the new ideology, but also constitutes dominant ideology of our time, against which all of its challengers must be defined themselves. It is recommended that its conceptual structure be broken down not just into one core, adjacent and peripheral ideas, but also and potentially more dynamically into a collection of six essential assertions that play critically semantic and political functions. The primary political purpose is to preserve and strengthen unical power system that benefits specific social groups. The paper concludes with a brief experimental, though exercise aimed at applying the insights acquired from the Frieden's critical examination of globalism to critical endeavor. Frieden pursued a second line of research suggests the innovative, though exercise in order to provide insight into some organization features that allow inside ideas to be classed.
So Frieden's article possesses a number of virtues. First, it wisely reminds students of ideology that political belief systems are ephemeral constellation whose shifting morphologies demand periodic scholarly reassessment. So second, it challenges 21st century analysis of ideology to reappraise antiquated, popular, and conventional. So classification system that might obscure more than they illuminate. So third, it display considerable intellectual imagination by calling for experimental thought exercises designated to redraw all ideological boundaries and reclarify ideological systems. I use the term globality to signify a future social condition characterized by tech, economic, political, and cultural interconnection and global flows that make 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 currently existing political borders and economic barriers irrelevant. So, yet it should not be assumed that globality refers to a determinate endpoint that precludes any further development. Rather, this concept point to a particular social condition desired to give way to new, qualitatively distinct and moreover, we could easily imagine different social manifestation of globality, one based primarily on values of individualism and competition, as well as on economic system of private property. So another embodying more communal and cooperative social arrangement, including less capitalistic economic relations. So globalization should be confined to a set of complex, sometimes contradictory social process that are changing our current social condition based on the modern system of independent nation states. So globalization is about unprecedented comprehension. Such unfolding may occur quickly or slowly, but it always corresponds to the idea of change and therefore denotes the alteration of present conditions.
Good day. I'm here to discuss about Arjun Appadurai's contribution in globalization. Arjun Appadurai is recognized as a major theorist in globalization studies, coming from a theoretical background in Marxist cultural studies. His work operates within a theoretical framework which assumes an increasingly borderless global economy. Arjun Appadurai is highly insightful in seeing the disjunctures or lack of fit, the out-of-joint nature of many of the relations among different global flows today. He also provides an important analysis of the causes of the growing problem of majoritarian bigotry, which is affecting so much of the world, not least Britain. Appadurai's best-known work is the article Disjuncture and Difference in the Global Cultural Economy. In this work, he claims that the world has now become a single system with a range of complex subsystems. Appadurai is broadly opposed to the account of globalization as cultural imperialism, which fuels much of dependency theory and world systems analysis. He believes there is also a scalar dynamic in which lower scales are frightened of being absorbed in the imagined communities of higher scales. He is concerned that ideas of homogenization can be used by local power holders to distract from their own dominance. Marxist approaches tend to focus on articulations, connections, and similarities. Arjun Appadurai's alternative theory focuses instead on disjunctions or points at which different logics or processes go in different directions and cause ruptures, tensions, and conflicts. In Appadurai's theory, there are five main scapes of global culture, which is the ethnoscapes, mediascapes, technoscapes, financescapes, and idioscapes. Each of these scapes is constructed by particular perspective created by social actors as imagined worlds similar to Benedict Anderson's idea of the nation as imagined community. That's all. Thank you.
I'm Decadec Lagacek, so today I'm going to discuss the history of globalization. So globalization is a historical process that begins with the first movements of the people out of Africa into the other parts of the world. They traveled short or long distances to become migrants, merchants, or other to have delivered their ideas, customs, and products to new lands. So this means that the globalization is a process of history that began movement around the world in the past period until now. So they travel long distances and or shorter to deliver goods, their ideas, customs, and their culture. So history of globalization has three phases. One is the archaic globalization, two is the proto-globalization, and three is the modern globalization. First is the archaic globalization. Globalization at this time is earliest civilization until 1600s is archaic globalization. This means that archaic describes the states and relationship between other communities and also their states, countries of where they have been created, while geographical and spread ideas and social norms and both local and regional levels that will help them to more equalize and being transport other goods and products over the other land. So the example of this is in the given picture, it is the Silk Road is an instance that they were being connected or used the link to trade routes, and Silk Roads is the main upper lands that which is created until the main road. This means that since the last period until now, this was the first routes that they delivered salt and spices to other lands. Second one is the proto-globalization. Proto-globalization is, or early modern globalization, is a period of roughly between 1600 to 1800s. This proto-globalization means this was first introduced by E.G. Hopkins and Christopher Bailey. When the proto-globalization distinguished, they managed to itself from modern to globalization to the basis of they were basis of being expanded, or the globalization is being expanded to the new method of managing global trades, the level of information exchange that will help the world communicate better and become one, and the level of information they exchange. So as you can see in the picture, it is very similar to Archeot, but the routes of the sea become more and more easy to access because of the rise of the maritime, and also they can share their culture more easy too. Third one is the modern globalization. During the 19th century, globalization approached in the modern form as a result of industrial revolution. In the 19th century, the steamship reduced and costs in the international transport significantly, and railroads made in inland and transport cheaper. So this means that in the modern globalization, it's become more easier to transport goods. We also have the rise of the shipping of containers and helped us advance in the modern globalization. And also around the 19th century, it increased the labor of other countries and coupled with decreased the transport costs and lead to smaller world, and all that will become as one. So as example as the technologies. In the modern globalization, technologies is more accessible, and we can share more a lot about culture of other countries.
Hi, my name is Liruben Xiao, the assigned reporter for the continuation of the topic Scapes of Globalization. The number 4 topic is Financescapes. Is also a term for the different forms of capital and movement of the capital across the world. Forms of capital and how might they move includes cash, electronic cash via personal or bank to bank, stocks via stocks exchange, commodities via commodities. Financescape is a globalization refers to the flow of money across political borders like the other flows discussed by Appadurai. The phenomenon has been occurring for centuries. Examples include cash or electronic equivalents like bank transfers, stocks via stocks exchange, currencies via the currency exchange, commodities via commodities market, and in today's era, things like decentralized virtual currencies, such as Bitcoin, for example, via peer-to-peer mechanisms, as well as exchanges. It's more like a trading business. The number 5 of the topic is called Mediascape. Now, Mediascape refers to the flow of media across borders. In earlier historic periods, it could take weeks or even months for entertainment and education content to travel from one location to another. Mediascapes are platforms that create information that often emerge centered, story-based micronism and information they spread. The platforms often based on electronic medias include newspapers or magazines. Examples are televised commercial where you often see on cable TVs. Another examples are media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. But more especially for this generation, YouTube has been a big part for mediascapes, such as almost all influencers use YouTube to have mediascape. So that is all for the continuation for the topic of scapes of globalizations. Now let us proceed to the 20 items multiple choice questionnaire. Question number 1. A scape according to Appadurai, which is about the flow of nature. Letter A, mediascape. Letter B, eduscape. Letter C, financescape. Or letter D, none of the above. Number 2. In the interview of Manfred Steger, this term refers to the both creation of new social networks, the multiplication of existing connections that cut across traditional political, economics, cultural, geographic boundaries. Letter A, expansion. Letter B, generalization. Letter C, intensification. Letter D, protectionism. Number 3 is a term which refers to the widespread belief among powerful that the global integration is economic market is beneficial for everyone since spreads freedom and democracy across the world. Letter A, globalism. Letter B, capitalism. Letter C, communism. Letter D, liberalism. 4. Escape, according to Apadurai, which refers to the realm whereby political ideas move around. Letter A, Idioscape. Letter B, Mediascape. And letter C, Technoscape. And letter D, Ethnoscape. 5. Globalization is having a multi-dimensional phenomenon involving economics, politics, culture, ideology, environment, and technology. Letter A, true. Letter B, false. Letter C, maybe. Or letter D, none of the above. It refers to the expansion and intensification of social relations and consciousness across world time and world space. Globalization. Letter B, globalize. Letter C, globalism. Letter D, none of the above. It is escape according to Apadurai, which refers to the global movement of people. Letter A, ethnoscape. Letter B, idioscape. Letter C, technoscape. And letter D, finanscape. He argues conventionally that the current fragment of established ideologies and the reviewed uncertainty concerning whether ideologies still exist have highlighted the difficulty of capturing the changing morphologies of political belief system. Letter A, Michael Frieden. Letter B, Manfred Steger. Letter C, Thomas Friedman. Or letter D, Arjun Appadurai. Who use the term globalization denotes not an ideology but a range of processes nesting under one rather unwidely effect. Letter A, Michael Frieden. Letter B, Manfred Steger. Letter C, Thomas Friedman. Or letter D, Appadurai. Conceptual unwildness arises from the fact that global flows occur in different physical and mental dimensions, usually divided into ethnoscopes, technoscopes, mediascopes, finanscopes, and idioscope. Whose idea is this? Letter A, Arjun Appadurai. Letter B, Manfred Steger. Letter C, Frieden. Letter D, Thomas Friedman. It has historical process that began with the first movement of people out of Africa into other parts of the world. Letter A, globalization. Letter B, liberalization. Letter C, privatization. And letter D, none of the above. What globalization at the time of earliest civilization until 1600s? Letter A, archaic globalization. Letter B, proto-globalization. Letter C, modern globalization. And letter D, none of the above. One major factor that has stimulated the globalization process is letter A, effective utilization of resources. Letter B, willingness to cooperate. And letter D, improve in technology. It is a period of history of globalization roughly spanning the years between 1600 and 1800, following the period of archaic globalization. Letter A, proto-globalization. Letter B, modern globalization. Letter C, archaic globalization. And letter D, globalization. Globalization was stimulated by letter A, transportation. Letter B, money. Letter C, computation. And letter D, computers. Globalization has created new opportunities of A, all of the above. Letter B, emerging multinationals. Letter C, providing services. Letter D, employment. Globalization has improved the living structure of which of the following? Letter A, people living in developing countries. Letter B, all the people. Letter C, people living in developed countries. Letter D, none of the above. 18. This is the period where steamships began and reduced the international transport significance, and railroads made inland and transport range cheaper. Letter A, modern globalization. Letter B, archaic globalization. And letter C, proto-globalization. Letter D, none of the above. What is the network of Eurasian trade routes active from the 2nd century BCE until the mid-15th century? Letter A, Silk Road. Letter B, Railroad. Letter C, Ancient Road. Letter D. What period of phases of globalization were there used the Silk Road as main routes of delivery, luxury goods, and spices? Letter A, archaic globalization. Letter B, proto-globalization. Letter C, modern globalization. And letter D, none of the above. So that is my 20 items questionnaires quiz multiple choice for this group 1 report activity. Thank you so much and God bless you all.
That's the video reporting of the group 1, and I hope you learned something from us, and thank you everyone for your cooperation, and God bless you all. I am the Cadet Janely Guzman, and I am the editor of this video, and